Imagine standing in front of a municipal judge, right? You're facing potential jail time, and your entire legal defense literally hinges on a piece of fabric.
Right.
Like, if that fabric has sleeves, you're just an innocent citizen trying to stay warm on a cold night.
Exactly, yeah.
But if that fabric has a zipper down the side, suddenly the court says you've erected an illegal shelter, and, well, you're a criminal.
It sounds made up.
It really does, but that is not a hypothetical. That is the actual on-the-ground legal reality in the world of vehicular homelessness.
Hmm.
The boundary between, just surviving and actually breaking the law is incredibly murky.
Yeah, it's the absolute definition of jurisdictional muddy waters.
Yeah.
I mean, what happens when a piece of property is simultaneously your mode of transportation, an asset, and like your only physical shelter from the elements?
Right. And welcome, everyone. We are really thrilled you could join us for today's deep dive. We have a massive and honestly quite heavy stack of sources to get through today.
We really do.
Yeah, we're looking at municipal emergency ordinances, federal guidelines, court documents, advocacy group reports, and some local news articles.
It is a very diverse stack,
Yeah,
to
why
say
not?
the least. And before we really dive in, it requires a very clear disclaimer.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, because the source materials we're drawing from today contain some highly politically charged viewpoints from both sides of the aisle.
Right, from everywhere.
Exactly. On one hand, we have documents from advocacy groups who are fighting fiercely for the constitutional rights of the unhoused. And on the other, we have records from city governments enforcing strict camping bans to, maintain public order.
Yeah.
So we want to explicitly remind you, the listener, that we are not taking sides or endorsing any of these viewpoints. Our role here is simply to impartially report the ideas, facts, and legal arguments contained in the original source material.
Exactly. We are just here to help you navigate the information and understand the mechanisms at play. So our mission today is to unpack the escalating crisis of vehicular homelessness, specifically focusing on Colorado. We're exploring that intense friction between city enforcement, constitutional law, and, frankly, the daily survival tactics of the unhoused.
Yeah, and to understand how a car even becomes a contested home, we really first have to look at what's happening on the sidewalks.
Right, the baseline.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Because according to the Common Sense Institute, the Denver metro area is seeing record homelessness in 2025.
Wow, record numbers.
Yeah, but the Metro Denver Homeless Initiative points out in our sources that those record numbers are essentially an illusion, or rather, a massive undercount.
Wait, really? An undercount?
Yeah, because the annual point-in-time counts, where surveyors literally walk the streets to count the unhoused, they historically miss people living in their vehicles.
Oh, I guess that makes sense.
Right, because if you're sleeping in a sedan parked behind a big box store or, in a foggy van in an industrial park, you are so much harder to spot than someone in a brightly colored tent right on a downtown sidewalk.
It's almost like an invisible crisis by design.
Precisely.
And for the people who are visible, the reality is just stark. Like, the Prison Policy Initiative provided a report called No Right to Rest, which details how just the basic biological necessity of sitting or sleeping on downtown sidewalks is legally prohibited in Denver.
Yeah, it's heavily policed.
The report chronicles how people are subjected to constant move-along orders. And looking at the materials from the Western Regional Advocacy Project, or WRAP, they're heavily focused on what they call the criminalization of poverty.
Right. WAP does a lot of work there.
Yeah, and they actually have this protest slogan mentioned in their material, "House teas, not sweeps." Honestly, I'd wear a hoodie like that if I was real.
Ah, don't let our secret out. But getting back to the serious nature of these sweeps, the mechanism of how a sweep actually functions is devastating to a person's stability.
How so?
Well, WRAP's data shows that when these sweeps push people out of public spaces, 88% of the displaced individuals are not offered any alternative services whatsoever.
88%. That's almost everyone.
Yeah. And furthermore, 74% have their personal belongings thrown in the trash.
Which mathematically guarantees they remain unhoused longer. I mean, if your birth certificate, your medications, or like your work boots are just thrown into a municipal garbage truck, you are entirely locked out of the conventional system.
Absolutely.
And this hyper-policing of public space, it leads to these genuinely bizarre legal paradoxes. I mentioned the fabric at the top of the show, right?
Right, yeah, the sleeping bag case.
Right. That comes from a specific court anecdote in our sources. 2 men were charged with violating a municipal glamping ban for sleeping outside. One man was found guilty because he used a sleeping bag.
Which is wild.
Because the court's logic was that a sleeping bag meets the legal definition of a shelter.
Which basically forces the court into the business of defining what constitutes a building versus what constitutes clothing.
Exactly.
Because the other man in that exact same case was found not guilty. And why? Because instead of a sleeping bag, he just covered his legs with a T-shirt to stay warm.
A t-shirt.
Yeah. The court ruled that clothing does not count as shelter, so he wasn't technically camping.
I mean, it's basically like playing a high-stakes game of the floor is lava, but it's your actual life.
Right.
And whether you're breaking the law entirely depends on whether you're holding a blanket or a shirt. The law is trying to create a neat binary out of a situation that is fundamentally just about human survival.
Yeah. And if criminalizing the use of a blanket on a freezing night pushes people out of sight, well, survival naturally dictates finding a legal loophole.
And for many, that loophole has 4 wheels. Which brings us to the vehicles.
Precisely. Because city sidewalks and parks are so heavily policed with sweeps and camping bans, unhoused people turn to their cars.
It makes sense. It's a locked door.
Yeah, it offers mobility and, like, the illusion of private property. But as the court documents in our stack reveal, a parked car is not a legal sanctuary. It is a highly vulnerable, highly regulated space.
Yeah, let's look at the Larimer County court case involving a man named Adam Weimold. The court filings paint a really clear picture. Weimold was homeless, and on a specific night in September 2018, every single local shelter in Fort Collins was at maximum capacity.
Completely full.
They were physically turning people away at the door. He had absolutely nowhere to go indoors, so he drove to the Padre Highway Rest Area and slept in his truck.
And he was promptly targeted by police and cited for violating a municipal camping ban.
Right.
Now, what makes this case a major legal flashpoint isn't just the citation itself. It's the selective enforcement.
Right, the truckers.
Yeah, the court documents show that police explicitly ignored commercial truckers who were sleeping in the cabs of their semi-trucks in the exact same parking lot at the exact same time.
Wait, I want to pause on this because the mechanics of this are wild. If I'm a tired commuter or a trucker taking a mandated nap, I'm just resting. My physical action is sleeping in a vehicle. But if I'm Adam Weimold and I don't have a home address, I'm camping and breaking the law. How do cities legally justify that distinction if the physical action is exactly the same?
Well, it comes down to intent and municipal zoning logic. But the enforcement is often driven by direct bureaucratic pressure.
Bureaucratic pressure.
Yeah, the sources include a text message exchange that basically acts as a smoking gun here. A Colorado Department of Transportation employee explicitly texted a Fort Collins police officer asking them to run off, quote, 12 to 15 homeless people from that specific rest area.
Wow. They specifically named them.
Exactly. They didn't ask the police to clear the lot of all sleeping drivers. They specifically targeted individuals based on their housing status.
Which led Weimold's defense to argue 2 massive constitutional violations. First, they argued a violation of the 8th Amendment, cruel and unusual punishment.
Right.
Their logic was that citing him was punishing an involuntary status. If every shelter is full, sleeping in a truck isn't a choice, it's a biological mandate. And second, they argued a 14th Amendment violation, claiming the selective enforcement we just talked about. He was targeted for being homeless while the truckers were left alone?
It is an incredibly compelling argument on paper. The idea that you cannot criminalize conduct that is an unavoidable consequence of someone's status.
Totally.
But I do need to interject with a crucial legal reality check from our sources. According to a recent report in Colorado Politics, a state appeals court actually upheld municipal camping bans.
Wait, they upheld them?
Yeah, they ruled that these bans do not violate the Colorado Constitution's cruel and unusual punishment clause, regardless of shelter capacity.
Hold on. If the court acknowledges that the line between the status of being homeless and the conduct of sleeping is blurred, how do they legally justify punishing the conduct if the status makes that conduct biologically unavoidable? That sounds like a total legal paradox.
It is a paradox, honestly. But the court leaned heavily on the legal architecture of the recent U.S. Supreme Court Grants Pass decision.
Oh, right, Grants Pass.
Yeah, the judicial logic essentially separates the act from the identity. The judges stated that while sympathy for the unhoused is warranted, these circumstances do not automatically create new state constitutional rights to occupy public property.
I see.
In their eyes, the city is not punishing the status of homelessness. They're punishing the conduct of occupying public land with a shelter, even if that shelter is a truck. They rule that municipal governments maintain the overriding right to regulate public space.
And when you regulate public space like that, you trigger what the Urban Institute research in our stat calls the homelessness jail cycle.
Yeah, that cycle is brutal.
It really is. It's not just a fancy academic term, it's a brutal administrative pipeline. If you get a $50 ticket for illegal camping in your car and you are homeless, you likely can't pay it.
Right.
That unpaid ticket becomes a failure to appear in court. That failure to appear turns into a bench warrant. Suddenly, a minor municipal violation results in an arrest.
Yeah,
And when you are arrested, your vehicle is impounded.
exactly. And the impound lot charges daily fees. I mean, if you couldn't pay the $50 ticket, you certainly cannot pay hundreds of dollars in impound fees.
Definitely not.
So the vehicle is eventually auctioned off. So the city's enforcement of a camping ban ends up stripping the person of their only asset, their transportation, and their shelter.
Rendering them completely exposed on the street.
Yes, and drastically further from finding employment.
It's a complete cascading failure of the system. But facing this reality and recognizing that tickets don't magically build housing, some cities are trying to find middle ground solutions, right?
They are, yeah.
Like, we have an emergency ordinance in our sources from Lakewood, Colorado, Ordinance 0-2022-6. This established a pilot program for the Colorado Safe Parking Initiative.
Yeah, the Lakewood Ordinance is a fascinating attempt to sort of hack municipal zoning laws.
Hack 'em.
Yeah, you see, the underlying reason sleeping in a car is often illegal is because municipal codes govern land use. A parking lot is just not zoned for residential dwelling.
Oh, that makes sense.
By establishing these safe lots, the city is using an emergency declaration to temporarily suspend those specific zoning overlays within tight geographic boundaries.
Okay.
It effectively decriminalizes the act of sleeping in your car, but only if you are parked on these specific pieces of asphalt.
And the program isn't just like an empty lot. The materials show that the 5 organizations hosting these safe lots provide crucial baseline amenities. They require background checks to ensure physical safety for the participants. They provide porta potties and hygiene stations, which immediately addresses the public health and sanitation concerns that usually trigger neighborhood complaints.
Which is huge.
Yeah. And they offer voluntary case management to help people navigate the labyrinth of housing resources.
However, there's a very strict bureaucratic caveat in the Lakewood Ordinance. These safe lots are explicitly limited to passenger vehicles.
Wait, passenger vehicles only?
Yeah, we're talking sedans, pickup trucks, and minivans. They strictly forbid recreational vehicles, RVs, commercial vehicles, or any setup requiring sanitation or electric hookups.
Meanwhile, Denver is running a program called All in Mile High. According to the sources, rather than managing parking lots, this program prioritizes rapid rehousing.
Right.
They are trying to move people completely out of tents and vehicles, bypassing transitional steps and placing them directly into leased rooms or apartments.
Yes.
Now, on paper, this sounds like a massive win-win. You get a legal place to park or even a free apartment through rapid rehousing. Why would anyone experiencing vehicular homelessness say no to that?
Well, you've hit the exact friction point there.
Right.
When we look at the Colorado Sun deep dive into Denver's RV dwellers, we see immense skepticism and often outright resistance to trading their vehicles for a room at an all-in-Mile High site.
Really? Why?
It is not about turning down help. It is about the structural strings attached to that help.
Because I guess an RV isn't just a car to them, it's an entire functional ecosystem.
Precisely. It offers mobility, a locked door, a kitchen, and most importantly, autonomy. Advocates in the article note that forcing someone to abandon their private RV to move into what they describe as a, quote, controlled shelter environment with a shit ton of people is psychologically jarring.
I can imagine.
You are moving from a space where you make the rules to a space governed by a shelter organization's strict curfews, visitor policies, and behavioral mandates.
Yeah, the Colorado Sun article actually highlights a specific person named Draper, an RV dweller whose perspective perfectly illustrates this bind. Draper felt, quote, tortured and tormented by constant police harassment, endless ticketing, and the ever-present threat of towing simply for living in a motorhome.
Yeah.
But to get the housing placement to escape that harassment, Draper basically has to surrender the RV.
Yeah.
It's like someone offering you a free hotel room for a month, but the catch is you have to permanently send your car to the junkyard to get the key.
Right.
You're being asked to trade your last remaining asset and safety net for a temporary fix.
That analogy captures the exact economic panic these individuals face. And this tension isn't just a local dispute, it's baked into federal policy.
Federal policy, how so?
Well, the federal HUD guidelines, the Department of Housing and Urban Development, they actually instruct local communities on how to legally classify RVs during their point-in-time homeless counts.
Okay.
HUD doesn't automatically consider an RV a home. They judge the vehicle based on physical disrepair, like broken windows or a flat tire, and the lack of sanitation resources, like an active sewer or water hookup.
Wait, so if my RV gets a flat tire, the federal government legally reclassifies me from being simply housed in an unconventional vehicle to experiencing unsheltered homelessness.
Exactly. Because a flat tire or a broken axle changes the vehicle from a functioning mode of transport into a fixed structure that completely lacks building code compliance. The bureaucratic logic legally strips the RV of its status as a shelter. And we have to view all of this against a backdrop of incredibly compounding crises. The Common Sense Institute notes a massive surge in synthetic opioid overdose deaths in Colorado, putting unprecedented strain on the very emergency and shelter services these individuals are supposed to transition into.
And it's not just the urban centers dealing with this, right?
Yeah, not at all.
The 5280 magazine piece in our stack reports that Colorado mountain towns are completely rethinking residency rules and parking ordinances for the van life community.
Yeah, the van lifers.
The sheer influx of people living in sprinter vans and modified trucks is overwhelming local infrastructure, forcing rural communities to adopt the exact same strict zoning and parking bans we see in downtown Denver.
It really is a systemic overwhelm. From the high-altitude ski towns to the industrial parks of the metro area, the friction between private survival and public space is reaching a boiling point.
So, to sort of bring all of these threads together, we started this deep dive looking at the absurdity of the legal architecture, how a zipper on a sleeping bag can literally be the difference between staying warm and committing a crime.
Right.
We've traced how the enforcement of sidewalk camping bans pushes survival into vehicles, only for those vehicles to become highly policed targets.
Yeah, we examined the constitutional paradox, where courts rule that punishing the unavoidable conduct of sleeping isn't punishing the status of homelessness.
Yeah.
We walked through the devastating mechanics of the homelessness jail cycle, where a simple parking ticket can systematically strip a person of everything they own.
We looked at the geographical zoning hacks of safe lots and why they explicitly exclude the very vehicles, RVs, that actually function as comprehensive shelters.
Right.
And we unpacked why offering a highly regulated temporary shelter bed in exchange for a person's last independent asset is just an incredibly fraught and often rejected proposition.
It's a lot to take in. When you look at the totality of these sources, you realize that a vehicle parked at a highway rest stop or an RV idling in an industrial park isn't just a municipal nuisance.
No.
It's not a simple symptom of a housing shortage. It is the front line of a profound legal and social battle over property rights, bodily autonomy, and who is legally allowed to exist in public spaces when the private housing market completely locks them out.
Yeah, absolutely. When you drive past a rest stop or an RV parked on a side street or a city sweep, you are witnessing that exact battle.
You really are.
And that leaves us with a totally different paradigm to consider. We usually view vehicular homelessness purely as a crisis of extreme poverty. But as we see climate change driving more extreme weather, massive wildfires, and flooding displacing entire communities overnight, our legal definition of home might be forced into a radical shift.
That's a fascinating point.
Vehicular living might soon become a standard form of climate migration. Society strictly defines shelter as a physical building you rent or own. But as a growing population finds their only shelter in a 1998 conversion van or a sleeping bag, at what point does the law have to adapt to the reality of how people are actually surviving rather than punishing them for how we wish they were living?
Wow, that is exactly the question.
Are our municipal codes and federal zoning laws prepared for a future where rapid mobility is the only reliable form of shelter against a changing environment? That is something every city planner and every one of us really needs to start thinking about.
Definitely.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We really hope it gave you a new lens to view the world through. Until next time.
Perfectly homeless is more than a phrase. It's a perspective. If you'd like to support our channel and help us keep exploring these vital topics, click on over to the Perfectly Homeless Etsy store. Pick up a warm hoodie with our logo and support the channel. Perfectly Homeless is a brand built from real life and real lessons. Wear the message of freedom and support the Perfectly Homeless mission.